Hey, hi everyone. So first, I'd like to say thank you for the 400 subscribers. I appreciate your supporting the channel, and I hope you keep enjoying my videos. And it's always nice to connect with you other guys that make videos and see what other people's historic projects, what other historic projects people are doing. So I appreciate it, um, and I hope you find the kind of my more research-oriented videos interesting. Today, I thought I would do um, a talk about a subject I've been thinking about doing a video on for a while, and I thought I just might as well go ahead and do it. I wanted to talk about kind of problems in the academic world of history writing and the history profession, and why is this why are these problems important to the historical wargaming hobby? Um, why should you care? And I would just say, I'm just explaining this from my point of view, which is as someone who is in this kind of world, the academic side of history writing. I'm a doctoral student in broadly speaking Middle Eastern history, but my subjects in the Ottoman Empire uh, and military history. So, 16th century. So that's why I wanted to make this. And the topics I want to discuss in no particular order, I guess, could be issues of getting a history job, what that looks like now, kind of some problems of the way universities now are administered, and then some maybe addressing some misconceptions around that, and I guess finally, what would it look like? Do we need sort of academic historians, and what is the point of having this kind of research done? And first of all, I would just say that when we, as a in the historical wargaming hobby, when we want to do a new period or research, we start looking for books, ideally, or even watching YouTube videos. I mean, there are some good history channels on YouTube, but all of the stuff that they present, generally speaking, comes from reading secondary research that's done by academics, or who in turn are ideally doing primary research. Although, of course, just want to point out the obvious that the academics do not always get it right. I mean, that's kind of it's always, things are always debated, and there's no one's ever perfect. So, but anyway, and broadly speaking, you can really only do good, really in-depth history research with a university position, unless maybe you're wealthy or already, or you have like a spouse that supports you or something like that. And even then, to get a lot of the historical literature, or even access to archives and libraries and all those kinds of things, you really have to have some kind of university affiliation to open doors for you. And maybe that's not fair. Maybe that should be kind of changed. But the point is that this is kind of essential to just doing the work. And also, even though we live in the age of the internet, not everything is on the internet. Not even every kind of like secondary book you might need on a topic, or every journal article, and especially sources. I mean, all kinds of primary sources are not digitized, probably never will be. So the getting a university history position in many cases is the only way to kind of do really detailed primary research. And what does that mean when the kind of profession is uh, having a kind of a crisis? But this has been going on for many years now, and has affected a lot of universities generally. And most of what I will be saying is broadly applies to the United States. I know a lot of you guys subscribed are from the UK, so I don't know all the details there, but I think some of what I say is fairly true there also. But the first thing is the level of placement rates for new PhDs. It keeps getting lower and lower. So maybe 30 years ago, if you got a PhD, there was about a 50% placement rate, and it was probably higher, but that's kind of the statistic that's out there. And even those people that didn't get placed probably got some other kind of job fairly easily, usually in the government, especially during the Cold War. One of my own professors, that was kind of what happened to his graduating class was, half of them went to teach, half of them went to work for the government because they were a linguist of some kind. And that career path is still possible today, of course. But, that doesn't really, having a full-time job is really not conducive to doing a lot of this research. The second issue is basically the increasing dependence of universities on part-time lecturers. So these are people that are given basically a contract to lecture a certain course load, and it's usually quite a lot, usually 4 courses per semester, and that could be anywhere from 120 students across 4 classes, which, to be fair, is fairly manageable. I've taught I've taught that many students before, up to even more. We're talking about these very huge like lecture courses at big state universities, and you basically get in these adjunct roles, you get no kind of benefits, or even the contract is not always, it's not like a secure contract. You don't always know if you're going to even be teaching at this institution the next semester. And I should clarify that the kind of adjunct role was intended for people in certain disciplines, like, let's say, healthcare, or like pre-law, like a lawyer comes in and teaches like a class on some kind of topic, twice, 2, 3 times a week, as in his spare time, something like that. That was the idea. It was not meant to be like this thing where the university basically hires someone to do the work of a full-time person, and then pay them, part-time kind of salary. So that's a big issue. And then the next issue that's related is the way universities administration, but also the departments themselves, will often deal with hiring. So a lot of cases now, in the U.S., more and more people go to college. So one would think that, the there would be an increase in demand for professors to meet the needs of people to teach classes. Well, that's not really what's happened. The administration at major universities has increased and increased, and I have to be quite honest, a lot of these people do very little to advance like actual like education at the institution. They don't really add much to the core kind of mission, let's say. And then they tell these like history departments, if someone retires, You know, they just say, well, okay, you're not allowed to advertise for this position. And then what the department will end up doing is they get an adjunct to teach maybe that class, possibly, or they just don't have it at the university. So, you know, you see this a lot with basically anything that's not perceived as being relevant. So, which essentially means anything pre-modern history. And nothing against you know, people that like modern history. That's not the kind of the point. It's the imbalance. So you know, like pre-modern history, which these days tends to mean mostly from the 20th century, late 19th to 20th century onward. Um, you know, anything that's ancient or medieval, or what I work on, which is broadly speaking the Renaissance, is just not seen as relevant, so we don't need to teach those areas. And that's kind of that's a big problem. That's more about what, you know, these departments kind of value over the over you know, the administration forcing things. But that's a that's kind of a that's kind of a dual, you know, it's from the administration side and it's from the department side. Uh, and so you get an increasingly narrow kind of presentation of history, and you know, you don't really get as much, you know, world history, and the world history that is done is again extremely modern focused. Um, and for people that want to do research on, you know, the basically anything pre-modern, I mean, in many cases, you know, you need kind of the resources that a university affiliation can give you, affiliation position can give you to do that. I mean, because it requires either just a lot of time investment in general. You know, you have to read sources in other languages, or you know, if you study antiquity, you might have to go do, you know, you might have to be an archaeologist, go do archaeology. Um, you know, so it requires a lot of time and resources that, you know, doing it as a hobby, uh, you know, just doesn't, it's just really not really feasible, I would say. Um, so that's a big problem. Just the and I would also say that uh, the you know, this is kind of a product of, you know, now most people go to college, at least in the U.S., to get, you know, something that they can deem to be useful, whatever that may mean, and you know, to the individual. Uh, and there's a lot of reasons for that that, you know, aren't really relevant to what I'm presenting here, but now that also contributes to this increasingly narrow kind of view of what, you know, history should be about, or what is relevant, deemed to be relevant to the students. Although, you know, I would say that in my own experience, like I had a professor that taught, you know, Roman and Roman history, and I had another professor that taught like military history of antiquity when I was an undergrad, and those classes were always full. Um, you know, even my medieval warfare class was always like was totally full in terms of enrollment, or I think it may have been over the limit by a few people. So it's not that there isn't demand. I think that a lot of students are interested in this stuff when it's made engaging and interesting. But you know, there's these administrative and departmental factors that kind of limit what is available for people to even, you know, be exposed to take courses in. So that's the kind of hiring issue, and you know, there's a recent case at West Virginia University where they cut not the history faculty but the foreign language faculty because, you know, apparently because this is one of these things that's not deemed to be useful, you know, according to the administration. But all that to say, this is the kind of logic that is in place at many state universities, uh, and it's not really a financial issue. I could understand if it was at a smaller university where they're more reliant on tuition and making sure that they attract students that are um, that are there to do something, and they can't afford. They have to be careful with their budget. That's a separate issue. But we're talking about very large state universities that are ostensibly about research, but then they cut a lot of these disciplines. So, or yeah, they cut them altogether or restrict them, so they don't really hire. They can't really hire the people that they need. So that's a big problem. And I guess I would just get into my it'll be my final point. This has gone on kind of a long time. Uh, what does this mean for historical gamers? Do we actually need do people actually need to um, have a university position to research, do history research? Can't you just do this as a hobby? Those are all good questions, and I've kind of already explained that a little bit. So a lot of it is just from a practicality point of view. A lot of archives you must have some kind of affiliation, or to get access to like the databases where a lot of journal articles and books are stored now. You need to have some kind of university library service, and some universities do allow you to get like a visitor's card uh, to use their resources, but not always, and they don't always give you full kind of access to things necessarily. And it's also just a time issue. I mean, I think certainly for some topics, if you're just doing the research as a hobbyist, I think you could do a great job if it's sources in your own language and you have the discipline and you know kind of where to look for things. But that's kind of the issue, is knowing where to look for things. That's not always clear to someone, outside, that doesn't really know kind of professional uh, side of history writing. Um, but and there are certainly amateur historian. I don't want to call them amateurs, but non-academic historians, independent historians that have done interesting work, and they write good books. Although a lot of those people are exceptional. I mean, they're the exception to the rule. That's why we kind of know about them. There are plenty of, and there are also plenty of popular historians that don't do a very good job at all. And for example, the famous historian Barbara, popular historian Barbara Tuchman, The Guns of August. So she wrote this book that is, very well written, and it's kind of nice to read, but it was a historical book of like understanding like what happened. It's not very good. I mean, she didn't use a lot of sources. She didn't, um, she missed like a lot of research that other people had done that had been published at the time. She wrote that book like in the uh, late late 50s, early 60s, I think. So that was pretty. But that's an example of where popular historians kind of miss the mark of they're not really engaging with the primary research or even the secondary research. I mean, I think you could write great books if you just kind of synthesize the academic literature. Nothing wrong with that at all, and it can often be very helpful. But that's the problem. Is a lot of the more popular historians don't really do that, or they do not know like basic standards of like citing sources. So you see this a lot with um, kind of journalists that become historians, where you have issues of plagiarism, either intentional or unintentional. And there's some famous examples of that, like the historian Stephen Ambrose, and even the other one, Max Hastings, who apparently plagiarized the work of this scholar for one of his books on World War One. So it's just something to that is not that popular history can often not be very good in that regard. Although certainly happens in the academic world too. Um, and ideally, peer review is there to kind of check those things. And although I don't always trust the peer reviewers either, but I think the higher standards are there compared to the editor of a popular book that at a publisher that is more interested in making sure it's kind of readable and exciting for a general audience, less so about is the research done, are you presenting representing the sources accurately, that sort of thing. But all that is to say that there is a place for basically a space for academic research, and that it's important in the historical field, because this is where the people can actually take the time to work on the primary sources and read them and present them in some form or another, because all these kind of wargaming materials, books, and popular books that we tend to read in the hobby are kind of dependent on a lot of this stuff, and even just publications of primary sources. I mean, that still takes the time of a scholar to sit and do the translation or to do the editing of the text, to make it accessible. So the the historical profession currently has a lot of problems, and I don't really have an answer or any solutions. Mostly what I'm just trying to explain, I just wanted to take today to kind of lay out what's going on, and that kind of affects the how that can affect the hobby that we enjoy. So I appreciate if you've listened to the end, and thank you for watching.